Welcome to another Bark Brigade podcast episode by Doggozila Magazine.
Glad to be here. I mean, we've got a seriously dense topic today.
We really do.
Mm-hmm.
Usually when you get like a medical diagnosis or you're handed a set of blueprints, there's this comforting precision to the information, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's black and white.
Yeah. Like you break a bone, the x-ray shows a very distinct, jagged white line. The surgeon points to the film and gives you a definitive action plan. You see the problem, you fix the problem.
Right. The variables are contained. You're basically operating in a binary system of broken or functioning.
Exactly. But the second you step into the world of canine genetics or working dog psychology and, selective breeding, that reliable x-ray machine just shatters.
It's completely gone. Yeah.
We're no longer looking at clean lines. We're navigating this diagnostic landscape that is just astonishingly murky. It's filled with hidden physiological landmines and all this subtle behavioral nuance.
And for the listener, the stakes for understanding this landscape are remarkably high today.
Yeah, they really are. Because the subject of our deep dive is arguably one of the most formidable, imposing, and honestly frequently misunderstood guardian breeds on the planet. I'm talking about the South African Boerboel.
The margin for error with a dog of this caliber is effectively zero. I mean, we're evaluating an animal that possesses the raw physical capability to neutralize a human threat.
Right.
And that's coupled with a deeply ingrained instinct to protect.
Which is exactly why our mission today is so specific. We have assembled a massive stack of source material for you. We're looking at comprehensive breeder standards, the foundational philosophies of elite working dog trainers, and this absolute bombshell 2024 genetic study.
Yeah, that study maps the DNA of tens of thousands of these dogs. It's huge.
It's staggering. So our goal is to extract the definitive nuggets of knowledge from all this data. We want to give you a complete masterclass on how to navigate the complex reality of acquiring, raising, and just living with a true family protector.
Because the goal has to be cutting straight through the deceptive, highly manicured online marketing, right? You need to find a genetically sound and mentally stable animal.
Right.
And the online landscape surrounding this breed right now is just saturated with misinformation.
Oh, that's everywhere.
There's a profound disconnect between what the breed was engineered to do and what modern consumers are currently being sold.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I am intensely curious about the historical trajectory here.
It's a wild history.
It really is. We're talking about a dog bred in the 17th century in the incredibly harsh wilderness of South Africa that is suddenly experiencing this explosive surge in global popularity today.
Right.
So for you listening, whether you're actively vetting breeders for a protection dog to guard your family, or you simply have like a fascination with canine genetics and the biomechanics of working dogs, this analysis is going to completely alter how you view large breeds.
To really comprehend the psychological and physical baseline of the Boerboel, we have to isolate the environmental pressures that forged them.
Right, we have to go back.
Exactly. This requires looking at the arrival of the Dutch settlers at the Cape of Good Hope in the mid-1600s.
And they brought dogs with them, right?
Yes. They brought these large, mastiff-type dogs. They were often referred to as bullenbiters with them on their ships.
But the Cape of Good Hope was not, a manicured European estate. The settlers were pushing into the Karoo and the Veldt. They were encountering a raw, unforgiving frontier.
The climate was extreme, the terrain was incredibly rugged.
And the predators were on a completely different level than anything in Europe. I mean, we aren't talking about a lone wolf or a stray fox harassing a chicken coop.
No, not even close. The daily threats consisted of leopards, packs of hyenas, and troops of baboons.
Oh, wow. Baboons.
Yeah. And when you analyze the historical documentation regarding these predators, the primary requirement for a farm dog becomes starkly apparent.
It's absolute uncompromising functionality, isn't it?
Exactly. A dog tasked with defending an isolated homestead from a leopard cannot be slow. It cannot be overly heavy. And it certainly cannot be stupid.
I was actually reading about the specific threat of baboons in these regions from our sources. Baboons possess massive canines, incredible agility, and this highly organized pack intelligence.
Right, they are incredibly dangerous.
So if a farm dog simply charges headlong into a troop of baboons with blind aggression, that dog will be killed almost instantly.
Without a doubt. To survive that environment, those European Mastiff types had to interbreed with resilient indigenous dogs to develop a highly specific cognitive trait.
They had to learn how to think.
Yes, they had to think independently, assess the geometry of a threat, and apply force tactically rather than recklessly.
So they were bred through this extreme process of natural and functional selection.
Extremely harsh selection. A dog that was a liability, meaning it attacked the farm's own livestock or showed unstable aggression toward the settler's family, it was eliminated from the gene pool immediately.
There's no room for error.
None. The result was an animal possessing immense stopping power, coupled with an essential psychological stability.
And it is that specific blend of power and stability that is driving the data we are seeing today. I mean, the American Kennel Club only granted full recognition to the Boerboel in 2015.
Which, in the timeline of canine breed histories, that is practically yesterday.
Exactly. Yet they have already surged to number 118 in overall popularity.
The acceleration is just remarkable, particularly for a dog that requires such a specialized living environment and handler capability.
Right. And here is the data point from the sources that fundamentally shifted my perspective on this. In countries like Uganda, the Boerboel has actually surpassed the German Shepherd as the preferred guarding and security breed.
Which is a massive paradigm shift.
It's huge. For decades, the German Shepherd has been the undisputed gold standard for military and police works globally.
Right. But the mechanism behind that shift comes down to basic biological adaptation and thermal regulation.
Because of the heat.
Exactly. The German Shepherd possesses a dense double coat. It was engineered by European breeders to trap body heat and repel freezing rain.
So when you deploy a German Shepherd in the equatorial climate of Uganda,
its thermoregulatory system is under immense stress. It simply cannot dissipate heat fast enough through panting alone.
the dog will literally hit thermal exhaustion during a sustained pursuit or a long patrol.
Yes. The Boerboel, conversely, has a short, dense coat and a greater skin surface area relative to its specific mass. It evolved directly under the African sun.
So from a purely biomechanical and physiological standpoint, the Boerboel is vastly superior for sustained security operations in that specific environment.
It's a much better tool for that specific job, yes.
But, I have to push back on the broader implications of this popularity. If the Boerboel is the ultimate thinking protector, why aren't they as ubiquitous as golden retrievers or Labrador retrievers in suburban America or Europe?
Well, that's the danger.
Right. I look at this breed like a highly specialized piece of military hardware. You don't walk onto an aircraft carrier looking at an F-22 Raptor and say, I think I'll use that for my daily commute to the grocery store.
Right, you just wouldn't do that.
It is engineered for a specific high-stakes operational envelope.
And that operational envelope is exactly why this global surge is a massive double-edged sword.
Because of the demand.
Exactly. For decades, the Boerboel was protected from the devastating trends of the conformation show ring because it was isolated in South Africa. It was just a working tool.
But now,
As global demand rises, this highly lucrative online market has emerged. Breeders are recognizing that the average suburban buyer doesn't understand functional biomechanics.
they just want a dog that looks terrifying on social media.
Precisely. The aesthetic supersedes the architecture.
Which means the market is suddenly flooded with dogs that carry the Boerboel name, but they completely lack the internal neurological wiring that makes a Boerboel actually safe.
It's a huge problem.
So if bad breeding is diluting the dog's true purpose, we need to establish a definitive baseline for what the mind of a guardian actually looks like.
And the most effective way to evaluate that baseline is through the lens of a professional who relies on these dogs in life or death scenarios.
Right, like the sources we pulled.
Exactly. The source material heavily features the methodology of Rui Navarro, the founder of TYR Protection Dogs and Elite Boerboels. He's also the author of the Boerboel Bible.
Right. And Navarro is not breeding dogs for blue ribbons. He is delivering elite family protection dogs to private clients across, 30 countries?
30 countries, yeah.
Right.
When you operate at that elite level, your metric for success completely changes. A professional does not care if the dog's head is 2 inches wider than the standard.
Or if the dog looks intimidating sitting on a lawn.
Exactly. They are evaluating the dog's neurochemistry under extreme pressure. They are looking for the profound distinction between true guardian stability and emotional reactivity.
And the vast majority of the public conflates the two, don't they?
Oh, all the time. They see a dog lunging at the end of a leash, barking frantically at a passing bicycle or delivery driver, and they think, wow, what a protective dog.
Let me play the role of the civilian buyer for a second here.
Go for it.
If I am purchasing a guard dog for my property, I might actually want that exact behavior. I want an early warning system. If someone approaches my perimeter, I want a massive dog throwing itself against the fence, barking its head off to create a psychological deterrent. Why is that considered a flaw?
What's fascinating here is that an animal that reacts with frantic aggression to a non-threat is not operating from a place of authority.
It's not.
No, it is operating from a place of deep insecurity and fear. When a dog is emotionally reactive, its sympathetic nervous system is highly engaged.
Okay, so it's experiencing a spike in cortisol and adrenaline.
Exactly. In that state of amygdala hijack, the dog's prefrontal cortex, which is the area of the brain responsible for logic and threat assessment, it effectively shuts down.
It's acting blindly.
Completely blindly, which means the dog cannot differentiate between a home invader holding a weapon and your neighbor's 6-year-old child retrieving a lost baseball.
Oh, yeah, that's terrifying. So exactly the opposite of protection.
It is an unpredictable liability. Furthermore, a genuinely confident intruder can often spot a fear-reactive dog immediately.
Really? How?
If the intruder calls the dog's bluff and steps forward aggressively, a fear biter will frequently shut down, retreat, or just panic.
Wow.
A true Boerboel does not waste energy on false alarms. It utilizes its sheer physical presence as the primary deterrent.
There is a remarkable anecdote in the research that perfectly illustrates this psychological stability.
The one with the trails.
Yes. An owner describes her routine of taking evening walks with her Boerboel along these really brush-heavy trails. And on multiple occasions, the dog detected predators, specifically coyotes and bears hidden in the tree line, long before the human sensory organs could even register the threat.
Right. The dog's olfactory and auditory processing identified the apex predator. But how did it react? Did it lunge and bark frantically, triggering a potential prey drive response from the bear?
No. And this is the crazy part. The source details how the Boerboel intuitively stepped in front of the owner's path, planting its body horizontally to block her forward momentum.
It became a physical barrier.
Exactly. And then it gently, physically pushed the owner backward, creating distance from the threat.
That is incredible.
The dog did not vocalize, it did not lose emotional control, it executed a highly calculated tactical maneuver to secure the safety of his pack leader.
And that behavior is the absolute hallmark of elite working genetics. It requires an extraordinary balance of natural guard instinct, immense loyalty, and just complete emotional regulation.
And how does that translate inside the home?
Inside the home, this manifests as a profoundly calm presence. An authentic Boerboel is highly maternal and observant. It's capable of resting quietly while the household operates around it, yet it's instantly capable of escalating its response if a genuine anomaly occurs.
But, the genetics only provide the raw circuitry.
Right.
The hardware is useless without the correct software, and the software is written during the first few months of the dog's life.
The socialization phase.
Exactly. We need to analyze the mechanics of raising the protector, because the reality of family life is chaotic. Imagine a household with a toddler.
Oh, that's a high-stress environment for any dog.
Right. You have sudden, high-pitched crying, erratic movements, toys being thrown, food dropping on the floor. Integrating a rapidly growing 150-pound apex predator into that environment requires an absolute unyielding protocol.
The sources establish rigid safety parameters for this exact scenario. The absolute foundation is strict, unwavering supervision.
You can't just leave them alone.
Never. A large guardian breed and a toddler are never left unattended, regardless of how good the dog's temperament is. However, successful integration relies on establishing the dog's position within the family hierarchy. The Boerboel must be an active, integrated member of the household.
The texts explicitly state that the Boerboel cannot be treated as a backyard ornament.
No. If you isolate a highly intelligent, pack-oriented guardian dog on a chain in the yard, depriving it of social interaction boundaries, you are actively degrading its psychological stability.
You're essentially creating a bored, frustrated, and ultimately dangerous animal.
Exactly. Emotional stability is forged during the critical neurological development windows, primarily the first 3 months of life.
So what's happening those first 3 months?
During this imprinting phase, the puppy's brain is rapidly forming synapses. Early, intensive socialization is a structural requirement. You have to build their confidence.
Because we mentioned earlier that fear creates a liability. So the mechanism to prevent that fear is systematic environmental exposure.
Yes. You have to intentionally introduce the puppy to the stimuli of the human world.
Like what?
Like the sudden expansion of an umbrella, the clatter of a dropped metal pan, the fast movement of skateboards, the sound of heavy traffic, and people of varying ages and gaits.
So by exposing the dog to these variables during that early neuroplasticity window, you're essentially building a database of normal environmental background noise.
Exactly. When the dog reaches maturity, its brain automatically filters out the skateboard or the umbrella as non-threatening.
Which allows the dog to reserve its protective instincts strictly for abnormal, threatening behaviors.
Right, but this means the owner's daily routine must fundamentally change.
You can't just let the dog out into the yard for 10 minutes and call it a day.
Absolutely not. The protocols demand structured walks, dedicated obedience sessions, and controlled play. You have to engage the dog's mind, or the dog will find its own, usually destructive ways to expend that energy.
Which brings us to the critical methodology of balanced training.
You cannot rely on a massive, independent breed to simply absorb the rules of human society through osmosis. They require a distinct, clear framework of communication.
You know, the debate in the dog training world often swings between two extreme poles: pure positive reinforcement versus heavy-handed compulsion.
Right, it's a very polarized topic.
But when dealing with a guardian breed, I look at balanced training a lot like the fly-by-wire computer systems in a high-performance fighter jet.
Okay, I like this analogy.
A modern jet is designed to be aerodynamically unstable so it can maneuver incredibly fast. But it requires a computer making thousands of micro-adjustments a second just to keep it flying straight. A Boerboel has massive internal drive and power. That's the instability.
Right.
Balanced training is the flight computer. If you use purely positive reinforcement and ignore bad behavior, it's like turning the computer off. The jet will eventually drift and crash.
Yeah, you lose control.
But if you use extreme physical harshness and fear, it's like violently ripping the control stick. You induce a stall, and the system fails catastrophically. You don't train a martial artist by locking them in a closet and yelling at them. You give them absolute clarity, discipline, and mutual respect.
That is a highly accurate representation of the behavioral mechanics. Using pain or intimidation to suppress a 150-pound guardian breed is a ticking time bomb.
Because they'll fight back eventually.
Exactly. You are simply compressing a spring. Eventually, the dog's inherent protective drive will override its fear of you, and the resulting pushback will be severe.
And the other extreme.
Conversely, relying solely on treats without establishing clear, fair consequences teaches the dog that your leadership is optional. When a high-stress scenario occurs, the dog will just ignore you and make its own decisions.
Because it doesn't respect your authority.
Right. Balanced training relies on absolute clarity, high-value rewards for desired behavior, and fair, clearly communicated boundaries for infractions.
So we have established the blueprint for a stable, confident mind. But a brilliant canine mind is effectively trapped if the physical vessel carrying it is structurally compromised.
And this is a massive issue right now.
The trends currently dominating the online puppy market are not just aesthetically displeasing, they are biologically ruinous. Let's examine the biomechanics of form and function.
This is where we see the most egregious violations of the breed standard. The visual dichotomy between a true working dog and a social media status symbol is profound.
The source material provides two specific, striking images that perfectly define the physical ideal.
Let's describe them for the listener.
The first is the cover image of the Boerboel Bible. It depicts Rui Navarro handling a deeply focused black Boerboel. The dog's musculature is taut, its attention is entirely locked onto the handler, and it just exudes this coiled energy.
It looks athletic.
Exactly. The second image captures a black Boerboel in the suspension phase of a mid-stride trot.
Now, analyzing that mid-stride image reveals the kinetic truth of the breed.
What do you mean by kinetic truth?
Well, when a dog trots, it uses a 2-beat diagonal gait. For a fraction of a second, all 4 feet are off the ground. That's the suspension phase.
Right.
And when they land, the entire weight of the animal must be absorbed by the descending joints, particularly the carpus or wrist and the shoulder assembly.
Okay, so a lot of
A
impact.
massive amount of impact. A dog cannot achieve fluid, sustained suspension if it is carrying 40 pounds of excess non-functional mass.
True working lines possess the visible definition of an elite athlete. They do not look like lethargic, lumbering giants. Yet, the online breeders are heavily prioritizing comically massive heads and overly wide, barrel-like chests.
They are breeding for sheer gravitational presence, because a 200-pound dog generates huge engagement metrics online.
But let me ask the obvious question regarding physics here.
Okay.
If the dog's primary function is to physically stop an intruder, doesn't mass equal stopping power? According to basic physics, force equals mass times acceleration. If a 150-pound dog is effective, shouldn't a 200-pound dog hit with significantly more kinetic energy?
You are quoting the correct formula, but misapplying the variables. Force equals mass times acceleration.
Right.
By artificially inflating the mass of the dog to 200 pounds, you completely destroy its capacity to accelerate.
Oh, I see.
A 200-pound, structurally disproportionate dog is incredibly slow off the mark. Furthermore, its stamina is non-existent. If an intruder is highly mobile, a heavy dog will reach cardiovascular exhaustion within 60 seconds.
The excess weight also weaponizes the dog's own body against its skeletal structure, doesn't it?
Yes. The kinetic energy transferred into the joints during movement literally degrades the cartilage over time.
Which is why professionals evaluate athletic potential,
Sure.
not by putting a puppy on a scale, but by analyzing structural geometry.
Exactly. They evaluate the angulation of the shoulder, the turn of the stifle, and the strength of the hock.
They want to see a puppy that moves with a confident, effortless gait, where the legs remain underneath the body, providing optimal support.
Right, rather than splaying outward to compensate for a massive, overly broad chest.
But that physical collapse isn't just a result of overfeeding. It is increasingly hard-coded into their DNA because of the restricted gene pool these breeders are utilizing.
The genetic data we have now is just terrifying.
The data surrounding this is staggering. We are looking at a 2024 study published in the scientific journal Animals, which conducted a massive genomic analysis of the South African Boerboel.
And they didn't just look at a few dozen dogs. They analyzed the pedigree data of over 87,000 individuals.
87,000. Let's break down the genetic map for the listener, because the sheer scale of the bottleneck is difficult to comprehend. The study confirmed that an astonishing 91.2% of the global Boerboel population consists of inbred animals.
The statistical findings of that research represent a literal existential crisis for the breed.
The study calculated an average inbreeding coefficient, or COI, of 7.5%.
Right. And in the realm of population genetics, a COI measures the probability that a dog will inherit two identical copies of a gene from a shared ancestor.
What geneticists call identity by descent.
Exactly. Once a population's average COI crosses the 5% threshold, you begin to see a documented decline in vitality, litter sizes, and immune function.
So an average of 7.5% is deeply concerning on a macro scale. But the microdata is even worse. The researchers identified individual dogs within the population possessing an inbreeding coefficient of 50%.
A 50% COI means the breeder is executing parent-offspring matings or full sibling matings.
They are intentionally collapsing the genetic diversity to lock in specific physical traits, right? Usually that massive head or a specific coat color.
Yes. The study also tracked an inbreeding rate increase of 0.20% per year. But the most damning statistic is the calculation of the breed's effective population size.
Right. Let's explain that. Out of a census population of tens of thousands of living dogs, the effective population size is mathematically reduced to just 83.1.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this concept of effective population size, or NE, is crucial to understand.
Imagine a giant stadium filled with 87,000 dogs. Visually, it looks like a massive, thriving population.
Right.
But genetically, because of how extensively these dogs share the exact same ancestors, the total genetic diversity of that entire stadium is equivalent to a tiny, isolated island containing only 83 unique individuals.
It is a severe genetic bottleneck. This homogeneity ensures that unequal founder contribution dominates the breed. The DNA of a few highly popular, often overly massive stud dogs becomes ubiquitous.
And when a population loses its genetic variation, it loses its biological toolkit to adapt, fight off novel pathogens, and suppress recessive genetic diseases.
Exactly.
So if 91.2% of the breed is technically inbred, how does a prospective buyer possibly navigate this minefield? You can't just look at a puppy and see its allele frequency.
No, you can't. The only verifiable solution is rigorous scientific genomic testing. This is why the Boerboel International Genetic Screening, or BIGGS, was developed.
And BIGGS is not just, a basic swab to tell you what color coat the dog will have.
Not at all. It utilizes single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs, to map thousands of genetic markers across the dog's genome. It identifies the presence of hereditary health conditions at the molecular level.
More importantly, BGS provides breeders with the empirical data required to prioritize genetic diversity.
It allows a breeder to compare the genomic relationship matrix of a potential sire and dam, ensuring they are selecting mates that will actively widen the gene pool rather than compress it further.
So a buyer must demand this level of scientific pedigree research. When you ignore the genetic data, the congenital diseases that arise are physically devastating and incredibly expensive to treat.
The medical risks associated with bad bloodlines are extensive. It begins with the orthopedic disaster of hip dysplasia.
Hip dysplasia plagues many large breeds, but recent research into the Boerboel has uncovered a fascinating biochemical component. A study specifically linked the pathogenesis of hip dysplasia in this breed to elevated levels of plasma oxidants.
Right. This means we are looking at oxidative stress at the cellular level.
Inside the dog's body, reactive oxygen species, or free radicals, are essentially stealing electrons from healthy cells.
Exactly. And in the hip joints, this oxidative stress actively damages the chondrocytes, which are the cells responsible for maintaining healthy cartilage.
So the dog's joint isn't just failing mechanically because the dog is too heavy. The joint tissue is being chemically degraded from the inside out due to their genetic predisposition.
Exactly. And how this manifests in a young puppy requires careful observation. A puppy obviously won't have an X-ray in its first few weeks of life showing severe cartilage degradation. You have to analyze the biomechanics of their movement.
You are watching for a reluctance to engage in sustained running,
Right. You are looking for a bunny hop gait.
where the dog pushes off with both hind legs simultaneously because independent leg extension causes micropain in the hip socket.
Exactly. You look for difficulty standing up after a period of rest, or just a generally uncoordinated swaying rear assembly.
And orthopedic failures are only one category of risk. The sources detail a specific neurological nightmare: cervical spondylomyelopathy, commonly known as wobbler syndrome.
Wobbler syndrome is terrifying. It's a mechanical compression of the spinal cord.
All right, it typically occurs in the lower cervical vertebrae of the neck. The bony structures of the vertebrae malform, or the ligaments hypertrophy, pinching the spinal cord.
And what does that look like physically?
The dog begins to lose proprioception, which is the neurological awareness of where its feet are in space. They develop a staggering, uncoordinated gait, dragging their toes, which leads to progressive weakness and potential paralysis.
The sources also mandate screening for bilateral multiple cystic kidney disease. But the condition that most directly bridges the gap between physical health and our earlier discussion on working temperament is juvenile onset focal epilepsy.
We tend to think of epilepsy exclusively as a grand mal seizure, right? Like a dog convulsing on the floor.
Right, but focal epilepsy originates in a specific, localized area of the brain, often the temporal lobe.
And the sources highlight that a primary symptom of this specific epilepsy in Boerboels is sudden, unprovoked, fear-related behavior.
The dog experiences a neurological event that induces a state of profound terror or hallucinations of a threat.
Which means if you purchase a Boerboel that is acting incredibly reactive, aggressively fearful, and highly unstable, it might not just be a failure of your socialization protocols.
No, you could be dealing with the behavioral manifestation of a genetic neurological disease. The hardware is actively glitching.
Add to this regional concerns like canine babesiosis, a severe tick-borne disease that requires a robust immune system to survive, and the necessity of proactive medical management becomes undeniable.
Regular, comprehensive veterinary screenings are the absolute baseline for anyone attempting to maintain elite working bloodlines. A responsible breeder x-rays hips and elbows for official scoring, runs the full BGS DNA panel, and conducts cardiac evaluations before the dogs ever reproduce.
When managed correctly through science, a Boerboel can enjoy a highly active, robust lifespan of 9 to 11 years.
But the sheer volume of information we have processed here is intense.
It really is. Between evaluating the psychological stability of a guardian, avoiding the oversized aesthetic trends, navigating the severe genetic bottleneck, and screening for catastrophic neurological and orthopedic diseases, acquiring a Boerboel seems like a daunting, almost terrifying prospect.
It is a process that requires a profound level of respect and due diligence. You are not buying a casual pet. You are acquiring a highly complex, capable guardian.
Which is why we need to distill all of this data into a definitive, actionable blueprint for you, the listener. We're going to construct a practical checklist and an interview template to ensure you can identify a genuinely healthy, genetically diverse guardian puppy.
The most efficient way to start is by identifying the immediate disqualifiers. When you are searching online, you must aggressively filter out breeders focusing on intimidation.
Right. If the website utilizes terminology like monster dogs, boasts about 200-pound weights, or focuses exclusively on rare coat colors without mentioning temperament or working ability, close the browser immediately.
The second massive red flag is the absence of verifiable health documentation. A breeder telling you the puppies were vet-checked is meaningless.
Right. A vet listening to a puppy's heart at 8 weeks old does not rule out hip dysplasia or focal epilepsy. You need empirical data.
Which brings us to the specific questions you must ask during a breeder interview. You have to be comfortable putting the breeder in the hot seat.
Okay, let's role play this. The first inquiry must be, can you provide the working lineage of the parents?
You are looking for evidence that the dogs come from proven, stable stock, not just two large dogs paired together in a backyard.
The second question, driven directly by the 2024 genetic research, is highly specific. What is the exact inbreeding coefficient of this specific litter?
If the breeder does not know what a COI is, or if they brush off the importance of genetic diversity, they are fundamentally unequipped to be breeding these dogs.
Question 3. Can you provide the physical documentation for the Big GS genetic diversity testing?
Do not accept verbal assurances. Demand to see the genomic mapping results.
And finally, question 4. Where are the official veterinary orthopedic scores for the sire and dam? You want to see the actual certificates grading the hips and elbows of the parents.
If you deploy those 4 questions, you will instantly filter out the vast majority of unethical or uneducated breeders.
So what does this all mean? The underlying reality is that you are not simply interviewing a person selling a dog. You are interviewing a genetic manager.
That's a great way to put it. An authentic, elite breeder operating at the standard detailed by Rui Navarro will not be offended by these questions. They will welcome them.
Because they have nothing to hide.
Exactly. They pride themselves on extreme transparency, scientific testing, and prioritizing real-world capability over sheer mass.
We have covered an immense amount of ground today. Let's synthesize the core truths of this deep dive. The South African Boerboel is an unparalleled, highly intuitive family guardian. But that truth only holds if you actively prioritize cognitive stability and functional athletic movement over extreme disproportionate size.
You must utilize tools like the Big GS screening to combat the severe inbreeding bottleneck that threatens the breed's biological future.
And most importantly, you must commit to the lifestyle required to mold the dog's mind. You have to execute the early socialization, enforce the clear boundaries, and apply the balanced training that an independent, powerful apex predator requires to safely integrate into human society.
Which leads to a final underlying concept worth examining. We have spent this time dissecting how humans shape the dog. We shape their physical structure through selective genetics, we shape their neurological pathways through early socialization, and we shape their behavior through rigorous training.
We are the architects of the animal.
But consider the reciprocal effect. Consider how taking responsibility for an animal that requires absolute clarity, profound emotional regulation, and unwavering, calm leadership might inadvertently reshape the owner.
Oh, wow.
That's deep. Raising a true, stable Boerboel forces you to abandon emotional volatility. In the process of teaching this massive dog to be a grounded, reliable protector, you may find that you have to master those exact same psychological qualities within yourself.
You cannot lead a powerful dog if you cannot lead yourself. That's a brilliant final thought. Thank you for joining us on this extensive deep dive. Continue to demand the data, look past the superficial marketing, and remember that when you navigate the complex, murky waters of canine genetics, rigorous knowledge is your absolute best protection.